Welcome to mikeybalzz Fishing. So here's what we're going to do today. I am in the bass cave, as you can see. This is where I do all my video editing and all that. We've gotten a bunch of rain, like a whole ton of rain, and that usually means dirty water, and that can be applied anywhere. Whether we're on Okeechobee, you get a bunch of wind, whether you're up here on the TVA or Smith Lake where the water like runs in. So you guys remember the skirt making kit, this guy right here. Well, check this out. I got a whole box of jigs, like a whole box of jigs, and I gotta send a shout out to my buddy Ronan, because he's making this video happen. I have one of the coolest skirt making tools ever invented, and you can't get them anymore, and he gave me one. He gave me a bunch of jigs to try to play around with this. So look at all those. So what I want to do today is we're going to make a few different types of jig skirts that apply to that spring kind of muddy water period. I got a bunch of skirt materials over here, and we're going to run through some very basic skirts for your jigs and then for your spinnerbaits or your chatterbaits. We're going to put them together. We're going to make them with this tool, this super awesome tool, which if you can get your hands on, get one. Get one. It might be pricey, or someone wants to start making them again. That'd be awesome too. But stay tuned, because this will be kind of cool. I like this custom aspect because you can make exactly what you want for whatever situation you're in. Pick out the exact jig you want instead of being restricted by the things that are already pre-made. And really, price point wise, you can save some dollars, dude. And it's custom, so it feels good. It gives you that extra level of confidence when you get on the water. So stick with me here. We're going to do some epic jig making. So this is the tool we're going to be using. Now, the tool itself is usually just this plastic apparatus. I've mounted it to a small 2x4 using those clamp screws right there. They're actually just little kind of like, I don't know, like vice kind of clamps. You can see just right there. So what's the art of this thing? So what it does is, you see there's 3 prongs right there, and they spread out when you turn it just like that. Basically, what you do is you put a skirt collar over this thing, and then you open it, it locks open, you pass the skirt material through that hole, close it, and then you slide that skirt collar off, and then I'll just slide the thing out, and you got your skirt done. Big shout out to my boy Ronan, dude, for giving me this thing. I have always wanted them. They stopped making them about 3 or 4 years ago. Like I said, if you can find one, these things are awesome. Like you saw, the skirt material kit comes with a small tube you can do this with. This thing is so much more efficient, so much more practical, and just a lot more fun to work with. It's easier. Plus, I've done, I think, 4 layers on this one. This one you can do like 5 or 6 if you really want to, and you play around with it. So let's get to it. I have all these layers, which I'm going to show you. I buy all the Fishing Skirts Unlimited kind of like layers. It's a bunch of different colors. And they're really super cheap, actually, and they come with a bunch of layers inside. Like I said, our focus for this video is going to be layers that are going to work in dirty water spring conditions. So the first jig that I actually want to do is a pretty simple jig. We have some high water. Actually, this one's all train tackle. They come. Oh, that's one that I made before. Let's see. There's a bunch of them though. The first jig though that I want to do, is we have a high water situation here right now. So that means there's a lot of flooded trees and bushes. And of course, you guys know that I absolutely love to flip. So what I want to do is I'm going to make a couple flipping style jigs. I got these guys right here. This is one that I'm going to use, and I'm going to put links to all these down in the description box. I've bought a bunch of these jigs from Tackle Warehouse. They're all the Boss jigs, and you can see I have a bunch of different ones right here. There are anything from a ball jig to a football jig to different kinds of flipping and casting jigs, arky jigs. But the jig head doesn't even matter that much right now because we're really going to focus on the skirt. But basically the water's up. So I want something that stands out a bit. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my skirt making, my little thing here, and I'm going to grab out a collar. That's this guy right here. They can come in black or kind of like a gum kind of look to them. And then I'm going to grab my scissors out right here. And one of the first things that I do is it comes with little rattle holders. Mike doesn't like this. So what Mike does is he just clips them off, and I do it before because it's a lot easier to do it before than it is to do it after. So the next step is we're going to close our jig skirt maker. so that all 3 prongs are right there. And then I'm just going to take this collar and slide it over that. And you can see, super straightforward. Collar's right on there. And then I'm going to turn this very slowly so I don't break it, because if I break this thing, I'll be super angry. But you see how it opens it up, just stretches the skirt collar, and it locks too, which is awesome. So the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to pick our colors. So we're doing a generic kind of like dark water, dirty water skirt. So one of the colors that I like in that dirty water is like an orange and some green pumpkin. This is part number 056. It's kind of like a banded orange with some green pumpkin, or actually some standard pumpkin, I think. So I'm gonna reach in there and grab out, I haven't even cracked this one open yet, but I'm gonna stick a staple in my finger, and I'm gonna bleed all over the skirt, so it's gonna be a bleeding color skirt. Nice job, Mike. Always keeping it smooth and professional. Kind of a cool, oops, got one too many out. Kind of a cool bright color though. You can see the oranges in that. So I'm gonna lay that right on here because that's one of the ones that we're gonna use. This has some orange and some red and green pumpkin. This is part number 370. So I'm gonna crack this one open. Basically what I'm trying to do is put 2 kind of like louder colors in, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna back it all up with either like a dark brown or a black. Because really when it comes to this dark water, it's about kind of like a silhouette. Like you want it to have some brightness, but the most important part is basically like giving the fish like a silhouette to chase. Sometimes the skirts stick together a little bit and you gotta peel them. But as you can see, it's got some orange. There's a little bit of red brown in there, but I'm gonna put that joker with there. So lastly, I don't want this to be a super duper bulky skirt. I want this to be, gotta get my other tool, you know, not a thin skirt, but not super bulky. So I'm also going to grab, I think we're gonna do this with just a straight brown. I don't wanna go, because the water might clear up a little bit by the time we actually get out there to fish. So I'm gonna not do black, but I'm gonna do brown. Sometimes drop it on the floor right there. Sometimes the crayfish get this color as well. So just a standard brown. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take these guys and I'm going to sandwich them around that brown. So I actually want my orange and pumpkin on the outside, then my orange and red on the outside, and the brown's going to be right in the middle. Now here is where the trick occurs. I made this like modified grabber thing. I also have a little hook right here that came with my skirt kit. You can use whichever one you want. I kind of like my little modified grabber that I made. But basically you stick it through so that you can see it comes right through to the other end. You hook on that skirt material just like this, and you see how the skirt material is hooked onto my little jig tool, and then you're going to draw it through, and this is where you got to kind of match up. You want to draw it through so that your band is approximately in the middle. So that's probably about right. Then you take your little grabber off and you can even it out with your fingers a little bit. You can see all we've done is we've brought the 3 layers of skirt material through, and we are simply going to close the band. That closes the band onto the skirt material, and then we're going to just rock it back and forth. Be very careful if you do get one of these machines, just be very careful with it because they're very unique. We're gonna rock that thing right off. Sometimes it helps if you, there you go. If you just play around with this just very gently, open it back up, and voila, we have our skirt. You can see it's got some brightness to it. It also has some darker colors, and I'm going to go ahead and make an even bigger mess right here. Next step is you simply go ahead and you cut the tab ends off of these skirts, just like this. Boom, and boom. So I have kind of a bright, but at the same time still dark skirt. It incorporates some of those browns, some of those oranges. You know, honestly, I would throw a square bill that looked like this, or maybe even a trap. I think somewhere like a mustardy color and stuff like that. I like these kinds of oranges, browns, and reds. When that water, you guys always hear about like Texas red and stuff like that. I think the orange and the reds kind of mimic that, like that trap that they usually throw, or that square bill. But it's bright enough where it's going to stand out, but it also has that darkness. Now let me show you how you actually put it on a jig. The jig that we're going to put this on is a Boss. I don't think it's a half ounce. I want to say it's like a just under a half. Yeah, I think this is the just under a half one. The reason I like this head, though, we're probably going to go to Smith Lake. Smith Lake is a mix of spotted bass as well as largemouth. It has a little shorter hook. I'm going to do a bigger hook one that we're going to use on Guntersville, but it's got a little shorter hook. This head is kind of an archy style head. It's not exactly an archy head, but it has that horizontal line tie. Very good for wood. What's also nice, too, is you'll notice it has sort of a 45 to the hook. So when it actually lays on the bottom, it does put the bait kind of at an angle from the bottom. It isn't a stand-up jig, but it's kind of like it with that flat bottom that it has. And it's just a great jig for falling through wood. And that short hook shank, I like it when you're dealing with possibly fish that have smaller mouths, even smallmouth or spots. So what you're going to do then is you're simply going to take your skirt, take your jig, and you're going to put the hook through it almost like you're threading on a plastic and run it up. You'll notice there's a keeper right there. Our goal is to get this skirt onto the keeper. You need to kind of like keep it like, I guess from bunching is the best way to put it. But you just kind of roll it up and be careful because oftentimes you will prick your fingers doing this. So now this thing looks super duper ugly, right? Which it actually does, because what we need to do is then go around and even out the skirt material. Whenever you're sliding on and you get that bunching on there, it's never going to be super even. So you actually have to manually go ahead and kind of disperse the skirt material so you have kind of a good look. That's a pretty bad looking jig. I like where we're at this far. But you don't want it too thick on one side, too thin on another. Obviously, when you start catching fish on it, it is going to get kind of thick and funky, but you can fix it while you're on the water. But you want to go in with your best foot forward, right? But that's a pretty sweet looking jig. I mean, I like that. Now, keep in mind, this is not like a super clear water jig. You might be able to use it in super clear water on like smallmouth or something like that. But in this situation, I'm looking for something that's bright enough in the dirty water that we're going to see, but at the same time, it has a little bit of naturalness, because some of the stuff, especially if we're not way back in the creek, might be like a foot visibility or so. Not super clear, but clear enough. Now, I like the way this jig is set up. I think what I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to trim just a little bit right down there. And you are going to make like a huge mess. But you guys know I've talked to you about finesse jigs a lot. I like jigs that maybe hang over the hook just a hair. Keep in mind, this jig that we're using is a shorter shank hook. So even though the skirt hangs over it a little bit, it's a short hook, so I don't want to overcut. But just a compact punching jig. I'd put this on probably a medium heavy, like a 7'1", 7'2", probably a 7-foot medium heavy, my like Halo TI. I'm probably going to throw it on braid too, because I can get away with braid, like 40 pound, 50 pound. But just a little light jig. Trailer wise, probably some little small creature bait, maybe like a little otter, maybe even put a little stick bait on there, something like that. I don't want it to displace too much water, because even though the water is dirty, it's kind of cold, so I don't want too much of a kicking action. But that's our first flipping jig. We're going to do one more after this that I'm going to show you, but it turned out pretty cool, right? So the next jig that we're going to use, this is a traditional archy style jig. We're going to make a jig for going out on Guntersville, and basically this is going to be for pitching bushes or pitching around wood. An archy jig, once again, has a horizontal line tied just like that. It has kind of a belly weighted to it. It does sit a little bit up off the bottom, but it is going to fall a little bit more horizontally than the other jig, which is going to fall more at a 45 like that. This is a little heavier jig too. I think this is a 7/8, so it's a little bit heavier. What's also nice with an archy style jig, because it does have that rounded belly like that, you can skip this joker. So I can go pitch some docks, pitch some dock posts, and basically flick that thing under the dock, and it's going to go and then it's going to go down and sink. So you can skip it a little bit more. So we're going to go through the same process. I'm going to do this one a little bit faster because you guys are kind of already familiar with the process, or you can slow-mo it. So first step is we're going to cut off the rattle holders on here. You guys can add rattles to jigs. I've never been a huge fan, but I've never fished like super muddy water. We're going to put the skirt collar onto the stretcher. I'm going to gradually open it until it locks. You can see it's locked on right there. Now here's where I think everybody's most interested. What colors? So you guys saw this color before. I forget what it is. I think it's like 370. It's got the orange in it. Guntersville is renowned. All these TVA lakes are renowned for. Oh, let me just rewind. The first jig that I made is kind of for Smith Lake. That's kind of my goal for where I'm going to use it, where I'm going to tie it up for. This guy is going to be more for Guntersville. So this has a little bit of that brown, orange, and red in it, which I really like for Guntersville. But on this one, we're going to make a little darker jig. I believe that in the darker water on Guntersville, a darker jig is better. We're grabbing part number 362 of the Skirts Unlimited. Once again, this is one of their banded skirts. It's like the two-tone ones. I'll show it to you as soon as I pull one out. It's basically a black and brown. I'm a strong believer when water's dirty that you just want dark colors, like super dark, unless you're throwing like a moving bait. So you can see this actually has a little bit of red in it, has a little bit of brown in it. That's gonna be another one of our layers. And then finally on this one, instead of using the brown, we're actually gonna run straight black. I know it's super old school, but when you see how this thing looks when we get done, I think you'll like it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to sandwich these guys together just like that. In this case, I am going to put the black on the outside. I like it a little bit more the way it looks on the jig, and you guys can see once we get it done. But we have our skirt thing open, so I'm going to grab my little hook tool just like this, and I'm going to pass it through the hole. Yep, I gotta get this in my other hand. I'm gonna pass it through the hole. You see a little different angle that we're gonna do this at. Pass it through the hole. I'm going to latch on my skirt material, and basically all you're doing is you're hooking that skirt material right under the tab right there, and then I'm going to draw it through the hole, and I'm going to immediately take off my little hooking thing, set that to the side, and I'm going to use my hands to kind of even out where the jig is. I'm trying to be about in the middle, because what I can always do is I can trim this thing down. So I think I'm about good. I'm going to go ahead and close, and I'm going to kind of gently kind of roll that off, and then open it up and draw it out. So we got a very dark 3-layered skirt. I'm going to go through the same process where I'm going to trim right above the tab. And I'm going to do the same thing right here and trim above the tab. It helps to have a really sharp scissors, otherwise you end up like sawing at stuff. But you can see this is a super dark skirt. It's got, you can see that black is very obvious. It has some of the oranges and the reds in it, which I think stand out. But I think that the main feature is black, dark silhouette kind of thing, because really you're going for a reaction bite. I'm going to pitch this around docks and that. They're not going to see the jig, but I want them to see the jig. I want them to see a silhouette, maybe see some of the orange and the red, and be like, I want to eat it. And for some reason they like red and orange in the spring. They just do. So the jig that we're going to use is it's just a brown head jig. Not a huge believer in, or actually I'm not even a believer. I don't care what the head color is. I don't want like a friggin', I don't know, like a fluorescent green head, but as long as it's brown, black, or dark green, like I could care less what the jig head color is. Once again, this is an Arky style jig. So I'm going to take my skirt, and you can see on this one, it's longer on one side. You can see this front section is a little bit longer. I'm going to put that longer side onto the front of the jig, because I can always trim that down. So once again, we're going to just pass the hook through there. Be careful of your fingers. It's very easy to poke yourself, and you got to kind of wedge it up onto that keeper. It takes a little bit of work, and it's not going to come out super even, but that's what happens, and then you adjust it afterwards. So we got it wedged up right onto the keeper of the hook right there. So it's a bad looking jig, dude. And what we're going to do is just kind of spread it out and make the skirt material even on the jig to kind of give it the correct flaring kind of look. One thing that you can do with these two, you'll notice that some of my strands are stuck together. I don't like making, I'll make a little bit of a mess. I don't like making a huge mess. If you're a crazy like purist and you want these things to not stick, you can throw some baby powder on them, and it'll help them to stay not stuck together. But frankly, when you get these things in the water and like smack them around, get some grass off them or get some gunk off them, everything gets separated, unless you want to be crazy OCD and go through and separate every single strand, which I don't have time for or the patience. But that is a hot looking jig, dude. It's almost like a hot tamale. We could call it hot tamale. You got some black, you got some orange. You can see too, and I've said this before, and I think you guys have commented when we did the custom skirt building thing. Dude, I really believe that these layers, when you buy them out of the package like this versus the ones that are in the bag, like already on the skirt, they flare out more. Like if we literally bought this exact same nice, Mike. This exact same jig pre-made, I guarantee you that skirt would lay a lot flatter to the collar and to the hook shank. It wouldn't be nearly as flary. I think these guys are they're straight and they haven't been in the package for long. That doesn't mean that after like, you know, sitting in your box for like 6 months, they're not going to go flat, but there's no doubt that they do have more flare when you do tie your own. But super sick color. Those are 2 flipping jigs that I recommend. Always be customizing to your local area though, but I'm thinking about the oranges and the reds on Guntersville. I'm thinking about that dirty water with the black, and then the head style I'm thinking about is because we're going to be fishing some docks and we're going to be pitching some brush, and that's a perfect head for that. Now that I've made this gigantic mess, we might as well make one more, right? So we're going to do just a very simple one that I'll probably put on like a chatterbait or a spinnerbait. Once again, it's a dirty water spring deal, and it's going to be more oriented towards your places that have shad, that have even like herring or something like that, but like your kind of white bait fish or your silvery bait fish. And it's for a dirty water situation. So really, I can almost tell you right off the bat what this is going to incorporate. It's going to be white with some chartreuse, and then we might throw a little fun stuff in there. So let's get to it. So the first thing that's going to be different with this guy is we're going to use a gum style skirt collar. It's just a little more transparent. The black tends to show up a little harder. I'm not going to lie, like I should have white ones, but I've been a little lazy about buying them, and I bought all the skirt stuff instead. So I think that's a little more important. I'm going to use what's in the container. Same process though. I'm simply going to add it onto those 3 prongs. I'm going to go ahead and stretch it. The gum style skirt holders tend to stretch a little bit easier though too, so a little easier to work with. So I got that thing stretched. Now, here's where this is my personal opinion. You guys can be the judge. Like I said, the most important thing is going to be white and chartreuse. This is once again a banded skirt, part number 124, Skirts Unlimited, but it's a white chartreuse kind of zebra color. It's a little tough to see with the lighting, but it has white and then chartreuse. That's going to be my base. It's pretty standard. You know, I think when you have dirty water, everybody knows, put a little bit of chartreuse in it. Like there's nothing, you can never go wrong with that, especially if there might be smallies or spots, even though we're not really trying to catch those jokers. Yeah, you never can go wrong with that. We're going to drop these things back into the container. It is important though, if you're going to spend, like this stuff's pretty cheap, but if you're going to spend all this money on this stuff, like keep it organized, dude. I should really be marking number colors on this stuff, but I've been kind of bad about it. But here's the deal though, like the one thing that I see a lot of guys doing, and I'm always about being super natural with stuff, like even though the water's dirty, I don't want like a hard white, because in my opinion, I've never seen anything other than like a striper or stuff like underwater that's like a hard white. And those shad really change colors based upon the water they're in. That doesn't mean though that like it's not about silhouette like we've talked about with the jigs. But what I like to do is I like to kind of like mix up my whites. I have straight white right here, and that's beautiful in that. I don't know if I really want to add that though. I want something a little more nuanced. That's white, but that's not like crazy white. Like I want to be a silhouette of white. It's actually that same concept. So I have no idea what number color this is, but it's basically a blue sparkle, kind of smoke blue sparkle. I'm going to put that in, because the other thing you have to remember about with these skirts, guys, is part of it is appearance, part of it is water displacement. You want it to look a certain way, but you're also communicating with the fish's lateral line. So then the other color that I like on Guntersville, and I like on any body of water that has a slightly green tinge to the water, and I'm not sure how muddy the water is going to be when we actually get out there, so I want to have a little bit of dimension. It's a white blue glimmer. So this is one of those things that does that iridescent deal, and I don't know if it'll pick up in this light, but basically it's white, it's blue. It's white, it's blue, and it depends on the angle of the light hitting it in the water. So basically what we have is a white sparkle, a white blue iridescent, and then a chartreuse kind of zebra skirt with some white in it as well. So I'm going to grab my little dragging tool, I'm going to put it through my hooking tool. I'm going to put it through, and I'm going to hook these skirts to get them all. So what I have is kind of a white sparkle chartreuse skirt. You notice I do have some white skirt material right here. You notice how this is white, but a little more subtle version of white. You're going to see it as white, but compared to the white, it's not nearly as like hard of a color. To me, this just looks a little more natural. Even if the water is a little dirty, they're going to pick up on the water displacement, and then they're also going to pick up that chartreuse is so bright, so crazy bright. In this situation too, you'll notice I cut the bottom of the skirt a little bit shorter than the top of the skirt because I want it to like flare out all crazy on the top. But you know, just a way to make you feel like it's more custom. It's actually the exact color that I want, and I'll put this on a chatterbait, I'll put it on a spinnerbait, or anything along those lines. So my homies, I hope you guys like that walkthrough. Like I said, it's a way to be more confident in your bait. That tool is absolutely awesome. Thank you again to my boy Ronan for throwing that thing to me. It makes you more efficient, so if you can get your hands on one, do so. But it's a great way to even if you're not big into the jig skirts, it helps you to think about kind of what's happening in the water, what the water looks like, what your presentation is going to look like when you go into the water. And I think it makes you better at even picking like the soft plastics that you're going to use, because you're really thinking about what tones are going to show off in the water, what colors am I going to use, you know, what's good regionally, what am I trying to mimic, brim, shad. It's just a fun thing to do, and it's something fun, dude. It's like 8 o'clock at night, I'm sitting in the bass office chilling out, you know, not editing videos. Like, is there nothing better to be doing than that? It's not super elaborate like building a swim bait. It's something that I can do. I'm not super skilled like at engineering. And by the way, go check out my boy Jacob Wall. He's like building his own swim bait. Crazy stuff. But I can't do that. So what I can do though is I can make some skirts, and those skirts are going to give me more confidence on the water. So if it's something that you want to try, I'll put links to all this stuff down in the description box. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you got any questions or skirt suggestions for that dirty water period, like when you get spring, when you get a lot of rain, I always love to hear them, so drop them down in the comments box. Thank you guys for watching. Till next time, peace.